All right, sorry about that, folks. That was on me. For some reason, the internet cut out, and so it is what it is. Oh shit! Your window isn't acting right. Stand by. Why? Why? Yep. Sorry, folks. It's just one of those days, you know.
Yeah, one of those days.
All right. Anyways, let's just keep going.
All right.
I think yeah, we were just talk. I think we are talking about the Mackay Bryant
Yeah, like right
story,
as
and then
I was talking about on, coming out about that. I think that's when it cut off.
yeah. But yeah, it's like she was literally. I mean, the last thing I think I said was, uh, in the charge of attempted murder, she was right in the middle of attempting. So
Exactly. Which to me is like it's a pretty clear case in my eyes. But then, of course, despite all the facts being presented, the media and the Twitterati don't give a shit about any of that stuff because it doesn't. It speaks to a greater truth,
right.
and
God, I
which
hate
is
that
all
saying.
they give a shit about. LeBron included, who literally is like being called out. It's like, dude, you don't even know what the hell you're talking about. Like, and it's like, but instead of just saying it's like, oh, instead of backing off or apologizing, he doubled down, which is that's all you need to know. This guy is standing up to another a paper tiger that doesn't exist, except like because when it comes to like China and all the horrible human rights violations that that country like does or commits,
Mm-hmm.
nothing, silence.
Right. Yeah, the Uyghur Muslims are literally being genocided. What
Hong
was it
Kong
like?
being like submitted to like like whatever being pretty much swallowed up by China. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
nothing has nothing to say because a lot of his salary and his endorsements come from China. That's why the guy doesn't say a goddamn thing.
No, exactly. Yeah, I mean that's why he went. When the Rockets GM or whatever, put out that tweet, backing the protesters in Hong Kong.
Yeah,
He was quick to put the kibosh on or distance himself from that or castigate the GM for that, saying, oh yeah, he was talking about like, oh yeah, like I forget what it was, but he was basically saying like, oh yeah, it was an injury, like morally, spiritually, nonsense, basically.
yeah. He came out in defense of Hong Kong, and the entire NBA descended upon him. And LeBron is arguably its biggest star, and yeah, he came out and it's like, well, yeah, some people just probably shouldn't be tweeting or whatever the fuck he said. It was just some condescending remark that he condes- condescending and just completely ignorant comment that he
Mm-hmm.
made. Uh,
Yeah, Mister. I come from a very educated mind, who can't seem to finish a book. Have you? Yeah, someone put out a picture of LeBron reading. Like each book, like he has, like it's always at the beginning. It's never like it's never in the middle. It's never at the end. It's always in the beginning. And
yeah,
then like when that reporter asked him like kind of like not even that hard of a question, because he was like supposedly reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, and she was like, "Oh, like I see you have that book." It's like, "Oh, so what's what are some of the things that you're taking away from this?" Like, actually, I just kind of started this book, and you know, I know I do a lot of ums, but I'm doing this as LeBron's like we just have to it's like nonsense because he wasn't fucking reading the book.
Right. It's like the words got too big for me. It's just like, come on. It's like
Spicy take, Robert. Spicy take. I like it.
He's an idiot. Trust me, the guy is a great basketball player. I have to. As much as I hate to admit it, he's a good basketball player because I was. This is a guy that I thought should have broken down a long time ago, but he's still pretty. He's still able to do like what I didn't think he'd be able to do at 36. I mean, obviously, yeah, he's been getting more injured recently, but he's still. Because the one thing that he has over the rest of the league is he's a offensive lineman playing playing in basketball, so he can overpower everybody. That's why he's so good. Because you look at him like he can't shoot threes. He's not really a
he's just really powerful. That's
he's not like Jordan or Kobe where it's just lights out. Like he's a lights out shooter. He's really not.
No.
But the thing is he's like.
Yeah, he's very dominant, and
he's great. And the thing is, like, but he's also basketball smart. The guy knows what he's doing, So and just like any like pro athlete, like those guys are an expert at their field. No doubt about it. But that doesn't mean that just because you're an expert in this doesn't mean that you're an expert in this. And clearly, we see that like anytime LeBron opens his mouth about anything, he's a fucking idiot. And to be honest, the only thing, the idea of shut up and dribble, God, that's perfect. It's just like, because honestly, I don't give two fucks about what LeBron cares about outside of basketball.
Yeah, and like the idea that it was like racist for Laura Ingraham to come out and say that to him, like she told the Dixie Chicks to shut up and sing.
As they should have, and they were, I forget like what they came about.
Oh, like they basically badmouthed the Bush Jr.
Oh well, that's I can't really fault them for that.
Right, but it's like, but the point still stands. Like you're an entertainer, all right. If you had given up like entertainment and then gone into like actually done some research and then started going into like political commentary, then fine, right? Fair enough. You renounce your entertainer's ways, and you really started to educate yourself on the issues and things like that, and you started going on Fox News or CNN or whatever and start doing political commentary. Okay, fair enough. But if you're still an entertainer and then you say something political, you basically opened yourself up to criticism because you are an entertainer. I mean, I'm not I'm merely this. I mean, we're giving commentary, yes, but we are giving our opinions. But also with some research as well.
I don't claim to be an expert on
right. Well, yeah, stuff. We don't claim to be experts, or we don't claim like some moral superiority on a topic. It's just we're giving you our opinions, and given what they try to pass off as journalism. Or expert commentary, I think we are offering a much better product than the major news media corporations right now.
I'd rather listen to us than CNN any day.
I know. I try to listen. Because my family still like watches CNN and thinks that it's objective journalism, but I can't stand the sound of it anymore. Like literally, just like the sound of like Don Lemon or Fredo or Mr. Potato Head, Brian Stelter. I literally can't stand the sound of them.
Oh, Brian Stelter, it's like a nail on a chalkboard for
right? Because it's not as though like it's not necessarily that they're unpleasant to listen to. It's just like I know that they're lying, and so I can't stand the sound of lies.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I'm not giving Fox a pass either, because Fox, they're a bunch of fucking liars too. Right? I mean, like someone who I lost a lot of respect for recently was Greg Gutfeld.
That guy had, yeah.
Because just recently, because of the Chauvin thing, he said like even if Derek Chauvin, what was it? Like he said that he believed that Chauvin was guilty, and that even if Chauvin wasn't guilty, of what he was being accused of, he hoped that he would get found guilty.
Yeah. That. Oh, I see, Andy.
If like
I'm glad.
if anything, but the reason was so that there wouldn't be any riots.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is
So it's like,
exactly
motherfucker, you just said that you don't care if the man was innocent. Like, just send him to jail so there's no riots.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fucking cowardice. Fuck that guy.
But no, but this is why I've been saying this for years now. Like even before like all the Trump stuff, I was like, because yeah, I'm a conservative, but then people are like, oh, you must only listen to like Fox News. It's like, no, they suck too. That's the problem. Like all these, they're the same fucking thing.
Yeah, just, and I mean, there's some on Fox who I like, who I like more than others, or who I think are doing objectively better than CNN or MSNBC.
There's some people that are actually trying. I'll give them that.
Yeah, but yeah, like Fox sucks too, and like even just and like and I'm even just now with like because I like Greg Gutfeld. I thought he was and I thought he was funny, and I thought he provided entertainment and and new like he was Fox's answer to infotainment, right? Because like but Great like him coming out and saying like even if Chauvin wasn't like actually guilty, I'd still want him to be found guilty for the sake of not having riots. I was like, you motherfucker.
Greg Gutless is more like
it. Yeah, seriously. Nice one.
But it's just like you said. But I see like you're coming around a little bit more to like my side. It's like it's all the legacy media is just awful.
Yeah, no, and I mean, because I don't even bother watching, CNN or MSNBC because like they don't because like that news will come to me regardless.
Oh yeah.
So it doesn't matter. So that's why I've started like just watching the differing opinions, even like independent sources. Yes, I like a little bit of Fox News here and there.
Because at least there are a few of those guys that are still trying. But it's becoming very very small.
Yes. Yeah, but most of the time I'm looking at independent sources, people like us. People like us who just cover the news and then also give like their opinion. That's what we're doing.
I've learned more from listening to a guy like Owen Benjamin, who everyone has just thrown to the wolves at this point. Like they can't stand him. But the guy, like, at least in his defense, like the guy, like, maybe he's a guy that is working through situations in real time. Like it's more of like thinking about like, okay, I'm seeing this situation, and he's thinking about it, and in the course of like thinking through it, you might come to some conclusions that might not necessarily be very popular or could be considered hateful. But then he thinks about as he continues to think about it, it's like, you know what, I changed my mind on that. Like I don't really think that way anymore. And that, to be honest, that seems to be more honest and God, at least more thoughtful than any of the journalists that are, where it's at this point it's not even none of those guys are actually going out and doing journalism or even thinking at this point. At least Owen Benjamin is thinking, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, he's working through. Yeah, I mean, even recently, like this, he's going through some stuff right now, particularly with the idea of the Trinity. But like it doesn't matter to me because like because he's still grappling with it.
Right. I would say. Well, the Trinity is one of those things where it's like the more you think about it, the crazier you get. I mean, that's the best way I've heard to.
Yeah, I mean, because yes, technically, is the word Trinity is never uttered in the Bible, but the concept is there, and so but
and the concept of the concept. Oh, I mean, we're getting a little bit off. We'll talk about this at some point because I think it's important. But the concept of the Trinity itself is that it's been around since very early in the church. Like it's not like something that was like came about like 20 years ago. It's something that theologians and people like very early in the church have been discussing, and it's to me it's one of those foundational, like if you don't believe in it, like your Christianity is in danger, I think, or you're in danger of becoming in some sort of cult or because a lot of the Christian cults, it really derives on like their inability to not understand, but like their understanding of the Trinity is messed up.
Mm. Right. Yeah, and I mean, but then like even though he doesn't believe what I believe, I wouldn't like cast aspersions
Personally, I
on like
stopped
his
listening to the
his
guy.
salvation status, and it doesn't matter like as
I believe honestly that Owen's a believer.
yeah.
But the thing is, like, you can have a guy that you like can have a no one's gonna think alike all the time. Like you and I don't think alike all the time,
I mean,
and
just yeah, despite what everyone thinks, and
I
just
know. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's probably a lot of people. It's like, well, it's like I got to talk to Robert. It's like, well, I'll talk to Andy first. It's like, well, no, you got to talk to Robert. It's like, well, they breathe out of the same lung.
yeah, I
It's like,
know, yeah, yeah, and I'm sure that's like some people, the people who like catch these streams, I'm sure they're very much like why am I watching why am I watching two guys with the same opinion? It's like I'm sure it gets a little boring sometimes, but
yeah, that's why I throw in a few people here and there that I think are different from us.
yeah. Um,
But I mean, like, so I mean, guys like Owen Benjamin. I listen, then I also listen to some of the more what you would what a lot of people would consider like the more intellectual. Although Owen Benjamin is he's a very bright
yeah, he's really
guy.
smart, and it's so funny because he's not even pushing like ideology. He's pushing
No,
habits.
exactly.
He's pushing a lifestyle, away from urban centers, advocating for more self-reliance, and those aren't bad things,
Right. Um,
so
but I listen to a lot of these different independent sources that do not agree with each other that are honestly like, but they're yes, they're opinionated, but they're not like masking their opinions either. Like it's right there in front of you, so like where they're coming from,
right.
and because like they at least are actually doing some real journalism and real investigating on things, and
Hmm.
they are because they do differ from each other in many ways. You
Hmm.
actually get a pretty good, well-rounded idea of the story because a lot of them they're usually like us. We're talking all about the same stories. I mean, it's what's in the news. It's
Hmm.
kind of like what's important, and uh, but you're gonna get like some. Do you want to get force fed something from the legacy media, or do you want to actually think for yourself and listen to people that have also been thinking about these things?
Hmm.
It's and I'm one. I want to think through these things. I want to use my own mind.
Right. I mean, what was I gonna say? um and that's like one of the criticisms a lot of people had of the early church, where it's like, oh, they force it upon you, they force it upon you. It's like, all right, well, let's and I think to the benefit of the church, they did the opposite, and maybe they went a little too far the opposite direction, where it's like, all right, well, we're gonna just share what our faith, and you come to it when you're ready.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same thing with I guess with the news that we get. We just we yeah, that's why I decided that I'm not gonna try and like kind of like convert people in the sense of like political ideology, because for
No.
me,
Yeah.
like, because I was thinking about my own conversion, and it only happened to me when I started to when I started to notice the inconsistencies, when I started to see how it was affecting me personally, because because I think I've chronicled this, but the big shift for me was when feminists started going after me. You know,
Yeah.
because this is back in in my school, during when I was in school, and I would I was being raked over coals. I mean, very lightly, because it was still like back in the day. But I was being raked over the coals for being a man taking pictures of women.
Yeah.
and and I was being criticized for using, having my women or having my work uh, predominantly featuring women. And it's like, who cares, and
Yeah.
just and so like the shield of me being a minority, or the shield of me being a disabled person was no longer working, where
I
it
think
was no longer holding up,
what did they think you were like Larry Flynn or something?
or something. I don't know. But because the idea like of me being a minority or me being disabled, uh for some reason thought that it gave weirdly enough, I thought it gave me enough cover to like talk about these, to kind of like critique women in a weird way, or make women the subject of my work. But it's just like no, you can't do that. You can't talk about you use too many women, or you only use like attractive, like typically attractive women. So so you can't talk about you can't address women's issues or whatever. And so that's what really awoken me to all of this. And so similarly, I've decided that I share my opinions, but I wouldn't try to proselytize, because people have to come
Yeah.
to that. Some people have to come to truth on their own.
Well, it's the same. It's the same thing with Christianity too, where there's you always have those people that are on the street corners and like with the signs and telling you like, oh, you're gonna go to hell, all this stuff like, and I've never found that effective, to be honest. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've always found that when you are yourself and you're living by your standards and you just have a lot more joy and are you exude something that's like it's attracted to people, and then people
Right.
ask you
No.
those
Yeah.
ask
Exactly.
you the question like, hey, what's what's your secret, like why are you so happy? Oh well, I'm glad you asked that, and it gives you that opportunity to share. And that's kind of how I do any of like my proselytizing or talking about like the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I approach it. Like I don't force it upon people, but like people end up, honestly, I don't have to force it upon people because people come to me. And I really think a lot of times it's the same way. Like I don't hide anything. I don't hide my political ideology or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm just me. And I have a lot more um I don't know, I guess I have a lot more joy in that. Like, I'm not necessarily like, I'm not one of those guys that's like, at the Second Amendment rallies or the protests against like masks and stuff like that. And maybe there will come a time where it becomes necessary for me to do something like that, but I just want to live my life in peace, and uh, I hope it. But like when people come up to me and ask me, like I'm not gonna like hide it, as I'm not, if people want to know exactly what I think, I'll tell them. I don't give a shit.
Right. Yeah. Actually, yeah. I mean, I don't want to go into it right now, but yes, there has been some new revelations when it comes to masks. That stuff that me and you knew about since last year, but it's only now coming out.
Oh,
But
who could have
yeah,
foreseen?
huh?
Who could have foreseen, Andy? Who
Yeah,
could
I
have
know.
foreseen?
Who could have foreseen? Us. But yeah, well, we won't go into it tonight because yeah, well,
Yeah,
because since we already lost some time because of the internet connection thing, and seeing as how tonight's review is a bit on the long side, I think we should wrap
yeah.
it up.
Okay, well, we'll put a pin in for that for next week then, because
Yeah.
and we also will have to talk about our the voter frauds, or the oh, I'm sorry, the voter irregularities.
Yes.
uh, but we'll
Yeah.
talk.
What are you
We'll
trying? What
maybe
are you
we'll
trying
set
to do? Get this stream shut down a second time? Come on, Robert.
exactly. I know. Uh, we'll set that aside for next week. So at least we have some. We already know what we're going to be talking about,
Yeah.
unless something more pertinent pops up.
Right. Something. Yeah. Something really big, and that kind of like floods the news cycle. Then yeah.
But all right, then we'll get to the movie review, and it's a fun one. Um, I think you guys are really gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, it's like Robert said, it should be enjoyable. All right, well, yeah, that'll be it for us tonight. Stick around for the movie review with special guest Santa Claus, because we're tight like that.
Bingo. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and let's do it all again next week. Hey there, jerk faces. It's that time of the night for our movie review, and seeing as this is the last uh, month, last Tuesday of the month, this is the last of the guest month, and the last guest for this month is none other than Santa Claus himself.
We
But
got him off of his fishing trip, during the summer.
right,
Yeah.
Us and Santa are real tight, So we were able to arrange this off-season visit.
I don't do this just for everybody.
Right, exactly.
It's great.
And I'm glad to be here. You guys, Santa, only worked maybe a couple of months and that's it. So guess what I do in the rest of the time? I watch a lot of movies when it's bad weather in Florida.
Yeah.
Yes, and yes, and we got a great movie that Santa's picked for us, and that is The Dirty Dozen, starring a lot of pretty big names for the time. Chief among them being like Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson. I mean Jim Brown,
Ernest Borgnine.
Ernest Borgnine, yes, that's right, and
Wallace, Jim Brown,
Donald Sutherland.
Yeah.
Just this movie's just packed with big names. Let me, as per usual, I will give the synopsis, and we can get into our review. That's a short one. During World War II, a rebellious U.S. Army major is assigned a dozen convicted murderers to train and lead them into a mass assassination mission of German officers.
Yeah, that's a great lead-in. Santa Claus was making fun of me because I haven't watched one of the greatest war movies of all time, and yes, he's right. It is great. I thought I was going to give Santa a heart attack when I told him I had not seen The Dirty Dozen. So,
well, it's funny because I actually thought I did watch Dirty Dozen, but then when as I started to watch it, I was like, this isn't the movie I remember. And then in prior to recording, when you guys brought up Green Berets, that's the movie that I saw.
I have a different, like, it's like, no, I've seen The Dirty Dozen. It's like, but I always like mix up The Dirty Dozen and The Great Escape. It's kind of, which are
okay, yeah.
But the Dirty Dozen is one of those films that's so iconic that like it's everyone's kind of taken inspiration or parodied it in some form or fashion.
Right, like every like movie has like if it's like every movie that deals with like some sort of like detention or like some sort of confinement always has like that scene where they like they're planning their escape and and like the classic and then hit strikes up and then giving the vibes of Great Escape. I mean even Simpsons does it like in the one where Marge goes stars in that play or whatever, and she sends Maggie off to daycare. The babies plan like their own Great Escape style a mission to retrieve confiscated pacifiers, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. Yeah, it's a great great parody of that.
Yeah.
The and that form goes back in several different movies, way back even, where they've
Mm.
used pretty much that kind of format to build up
Hmm.
the excitement of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You
Right,
know,
right, right.
Well,
but a lot of
we talked about this a few Tuesdays ago, Andy. But like the Suicide Squad is a shitty version of this movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The most modern take. Yeah, yeah. Like the concept of of Dirty Dozen. I'm sure someone at DC is like, hey, what if we did like a Dirty Dozen but with supervillains? And it's like,
and they fucked that movie up so bad.
yeah. I mean, like the concept, like the comic books. I'm
Oh, the
sure is a
comics are
lot
great.
better.
The
Yeah, but it's
comics
just
are
like, yeah, it's just the movie was a
the
miss.
movie was garbage.
well, that's because they're doing a parody off of it versus uh, reality of the war. When
Right.
the things were going back there, and all these guys were sentenced to death,
Hmm.
except for I think one or two that got a life sentence. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, or
and
hard labor or whatever.
yeah, and they were misfits, and they were either going to be in a cage or they were going to be dead. So and the odds were, and well, of course, you've seen the movie.
Mhm.
This was their only chance of actually having a life if they made it. You know,
Mm.
And then
Right.
they
yeah.
all didn't go into it under the assumption that it was a suicide mission. They knew it
Right.
was a tough mission,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
they're all saying, if we can get out, you got to honor, And of course, we've all seen the movie. What happens? It's very dramatic when you think of if it being factual, if everything was factual in that movie. Um, from what I've researched on that particular movie, it's based on a true story, but they took it further into Hollywood for this type of movie. This isn't
Right.
a true story as
Right. A little bit more
portrayed.
drama,
Yeah, they
as it
put
were.
It's
Hollywood into it.
true-ish.
Yeah, they put Hollywood into it, and they did a good job of doing it. From what I understand, and I may be wrong, but I don't think
Hmm.
I am,
Well,
is
because
this was based off of a British operation that actually they did parachute people in to go after high-ranking Nazis.
yeah,
Ah. Okay.
because this was based. Well, because I mean, this movie was it was a book that was written which was titled also The Dirty Dozen, by E.M. Nathanson, and
Hmm.
he was also big. He was very integral in like getting the screenplay done. Because I think it was MGM that was the one that
Yeah, it was MGM.
film, which actually like because MGM was actually in kind of some trouble in this at this time, and like this movie saved them. It's
Big
uh,
time.
yeah,
It was a big hit. It really was a big hit. That's why
but
I get blown away when you haven't seen it.
yeah, well that's it's well one thing that I kind of talking about like the story of it, Major Reisman, who is also himself a misfit. Nobody likes him because he's kind of an ass. He doesn't really play well within the rules, but they have him, kind of take this. They volunteer him. I mean, we all, all of us military guys know what we're volunteered in a
Yeah,
lot of
one step forward and everybody steps back.
things. Yeah,
And the one guy that forgot, he gets the volunteer.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Or the
he
one
ended up.
not the one guy not paying attention and everyone else like takes a step
Right.
back.
Exactly.
And what they he's like, yeah, okay, that's great, you want to take these prisoners, like, and then what, you're just going to send them right back into jail? Like, they're not going to do this mission. Like, you have to
Right.
give them something to
Right. Some
shoot
sort of
for.
incentive.
You have to have a carrot out to motivate them,
Exactly.
because even then, like, with that carrot, they're like, they don't want to do it.
Well, no one wants to. If they were set in their mind that this was going to be strictly suicide, no one's going to come back.
Right.
That would be different, but it wasn't. I mean, when I take some of these movies and I try to evaluate them, I try to put myself in their spot. If I was in jail and hey, I murdered somebody and they're gonna hang me, you know, but
Hmm.
yet they put this carrot out in front of me and says, hey, here's an opportunity for you to clean your record up. Okay, instead of being a misfit, you'll be a hero. It's kind of like you're turning it around, and it's kind of like you say, I'm sorry, but you can't replace what you've done.
Right.
So then you get this mission where they give you an opportunity actually to have a life, and
Right.
even it might be a slim chance of you getting through this particular operation, but it's a chance.
Yeah.
Right.
Where he has
And it's
no
very
chance
interesting
if you're sitting in a cell waiting for the noose.
Yeah.
Right. And it's very interesting that at the end, like with the surviving members, they're all, they're given, back their lives and then some, like, because they're, reinstated into like the army and given back their ranks, and and I guess they're gonna fold them back into other units or whatever, or because now that they become an asset.
Well, not only that, the other part that I also liked about the way they portrayed them is not all of them, you see, were physically able or mentally able to do that.
Right.
Yeah. When you
yeah, I mean, I think was it Maggot comes to mind.
Where he's a crazy to begin with.
Right.
And if his odds of getting killed were higher because he was a nut. But I like that. It wasn't like it's truly Hollywood that everybody's going to come home.
Right.
It
didn't have that killed. Hollywood ending.
Yeah, I mean that ending, that dramatic ending as they go out, is to me it makes the movie more realistic, and not so much a fantasy.
Well, that's because this movie is interesting too, because there's a few other movies that it kind of reminds me of a little bit, because really, like, out of all the people that were all these prisoners that were brought into this operation, only one of them survived, and that's Charles Bronson's character, which was Joseph Władysław. He's the only one that survived, and it kind of feels a little bit like Seven Samurai and the Magnificent Seven, where like you have all these kind of like essentially hired guns, or in this case forced guns, to it's, but they win, but they don't really win in a sense, and the real wild card in the whole thing is Maggot, Telly Savalas' character, who is a fucking lunatic who should have been left behind.
Right, he shouldn't have went to begin with,
because a lot more of them would have survived. The mission would have gone a lot smoother.
Yeah.
And it's.
But hindsight's 20/20.
Right. But I think it also kind of, it's with like a lot of these operations, there's always something that like goes wrong, whether it's just, someone ends up not fulfilling their part of the mission or whatever, and, bad things happen. And
unpredictable.
Yeah. And the whole, because it's everything kind of leads up into this like the final act per se, which is the mission. For before that, it's really all fun and games. It's kind of like almost like a second boot camp for all these guys, trying to figure out how to work together as a unit. You have like the war games that they play, which is really hilarious, and
yeah.
And it, like I said, and even like before they have kind of that final meal together, and it's like it's all been it's been good, it's all been fun
until now.
Yeah, and now it's serious, and I mean they had to have drilled and drilled and drilled, because they had that whole the whole scheme memorized, and each person had to know each other's parts, because you never know what's going to happen, and you have to be ready to take someone's place just in case.
Exactly.
And man,
everybody has to play their part for it to actually work. And see, the other thing that you got to remember, it did work.
It did, yeah. I mean, not exactly according to plan, but that's the nature. Yeah, that's the nature of those kind of missions, where like everyone knows everyone else's part. So if something happens, that they can they could pivot and they could,
Change their way.
like they could reposition themselves, and someone can take, someone else could take up the slack. Um,
But
but
in
yeah, I
real
think it
life,
was great.
in real life though, in real service and in real
Hmm.
war, that's what you do anyway. I
Right.
mean, that's nothing new. I mean, uh, it's like one of the things a lot of people don't know is a submariner. He has to know every job on that submarine, not just his job. He
Right.
has to know all the jobs,
Hmm.
and so on and so on throughout the services. I know you were in the Navy, and I was in the Army, but it's pretty much the same as you train for your specialty, but yet you still know how to do other parts that may be needed in your area. You
Yeah,
know,
we have to train in like other parts just because, if like there's a, like on the ship, if there's a fire, we got to be able to know how to put out that fire. If there's
that's
something
right.
that goes
That's right.
wrong with, munitions, we have to know kind of like, how to deal with emergency situations and how to,
Exactly.
yeah,
So a
it's,
lot of that is bred into the soldier.
Hmm.
And the idea of things always go wrong because it's all timing. That's like you're doing
Hmm.
fine until the guy walks around the corner and then, oh shoot, you weren't supposed to be there, but he is.
yeah,
So
Right.
that was very realistic, and I liked that, because the more realistic you are, I think it has a bigger impression on you. And I love films that are based on true stories, um, because it's more meaningful to me, especially in war films, because let's face it, war is not fun,
yeah,
and it's taking of life and everything else from a serious part. But they make these entertaining because we like the history, and if you like the history, you want to know what it was like. I want to know what it was like on a ship if during the Coral Sea battle. Uh, that's what makes these guys heroes. It's not an easy task. They did a wonderful job, and we should never forget that.
right.
Mm.
And that's what a lot of these war movies mean to me, even though I can't watch some of them.
Yeah. Well,
Mm.
and that's kind of what Robert Aldrich, the director of the film, was kind of going for, because obviously at the time that this movie was being made, we were in the middle of Vietnam, and he kind of wanted to show that war is it's not all fun. It's not fun and games. It's
Yeah.
serious, horrible business,
Hmm.
and
And not everybody comes home, unfortunately.
Hmm.
and that's right, and the whole like scene of them trapping all those people in the bomb shelter, and pretty much killing them in a very cruel way.
Right.
um,
They don't know what hit them.
well
Hmm.
and here's the thing about that whole thing, because the MGM was like, they were wanting Aldrich to like take this out. Please, you'll win an Oscar if you take this whole scene out. And he's like,
Right.
fuck the Oscar, I don't care. I want my vision to be done in the movie, which is thank God he had the balls to like do that. He's like, fuck the Oscar, I don't care. It's like,
Right. Yeah,
and
because I
Well,
think what was it? This was like the first time, like, or I don't know, one of the first times where they actually showed like civilian deaths. Like, I mean, like, the
yeah,
companionship for the German officers. They were inside that bunker too, and they were innocent people. Just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and they got it just the same as the Germans. And it's one of those ugly realities of war that no one wants to think about, but we all know it happens.
yeah,
we would love to sort them out and only kill the bad guys,
Right, right,
but
exactly.
that's not realistic. You
Mhm.
know, um, if they took that scene out, to
Mhm.
me, it would make the movie terrible
yeah,
Mhm.
because
yeah, it really would.
of the reason of, if they didn't succeed, then it's like, well, what the heck was all that for? This was a suicide mission. This
Mhm.
was a no gain out of this. There's nothing good out of it. Just a bunch of dead convicts. They should have just left them at home and hanged them all.
Mhm.
But when you see that what they were doing, you got to understand the purpose of what they were doing, taking out some of the head generals and everything else of the Nazis. which is going to be hard to replace them. Is the whole is the whole premise behind it.
And based
right.
off of like kind of the it's kind of mentioned slightly in this movie, but this is the lead up to D-Day too. So like this
Right.
is it's throwing chaos into like the Nazi war effort, and it's kind of if they fail to succeed, who knows? Maybe D-Day doesn't go off as successfully as successfully as it does.
Yeah, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea, and the thing is, even though this was one movie, there's probably about 5 or 6 other movies that are similar, far as pre D-Day.
Right.
There was all kinds of things. Another one that's really good is the what's the name of it? The Singleman, I think it is, or something. God, I can't remember it right now. But it was a movie about where they parachuted these guys behind the lines ahead of time to set up beacons for the paratroopers that were going to come in on D-Day.
Yeah,
I can't remember the name of it. It's a good movie too, and it's very interesting because that's some of the things that we don't read in the history book.
Right.
But
well, I mean, just to really, I'm sorry, really quick, I wanted to mention that talk, kind of on the premise of how like not everything going according to plans, but even like the paratroopers that were dropped behind the Atlantic Wall for D-Day, they weren't deployed exactly as according to plan. A lot of them were they're scattered all over France, and like a lot of them missed like their landing zones by like a few like a dozen miles.
Yeah,
and so
and also they didn't know their intelligence didn't tell them that they flooded a lot of those fields, and we lost a lot of guys that drowned in those fields.
That's right.
Because of just the release on the parachutes, and that was another. You don't see stuff happens. You just don't know.
And something about this movie too, because when I was watching this initially, when because I've watched this probably about 2 or 3 times now, getting ready for the review. But the first time I watched it was on Amazon, and one thing I like about Amazon, sometimes they have like these little like trivia notes on the movie, and one of the notes on there was talking about how they were the trivia note was saying that Lee Marvin actually didn't really like the screenplay or like kind of the idea of the movie because he felt it wasn't realistic enough, and that his preferred war movie was The Big Red One.
Right.
And well, I did a little bit of digging into that because I was like, Lee Marvin didn't like this movie. I mean, this is
I understand it.
I mean, this movie was awesome. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of digging, and I read some articles on interviews that were done with Lee Marvin about this movie. It's like, no, that's not true. Like, it wasn't true that he didn't like the movie. He did. He loved every movie he was in, good or bad.
Right.
But it's and he always gave his best effort. But as far as like what he felt was, a realistic war movie, he felt that like The Big Red One was the most realistic one that he did, which, to be honest,
I agree.
is very true. And I actually watched The Big Red One in preparation for the review, and it's kind of also it's if you think about it, you have this movie which is kind of in preparation for D-Day, and it's kind and The Big Red One is also in preparation for D-Day, but coming in from the other side. They're coming in and taking out like the Italian front with with the Germans and Rommel and the Desert Fox and all that stuff, and a lot of like the major battles that were leading up to D-Day. And so it's almost like you're watching these two movies, you're kind of seeing the two fronts come together, like in the whole American war effort to end World War II, at least on the European front, take place. And if you haven't seen to our audience, if you haven't seen The Big Red One, do yourself a favor. It's awesome.
It is.
And that there is no, that movie's much more serious. Like, this has a lot of humor in it, which is great. But that one is there's a few light moments, but it's a heavy movie.
The way I evaluate it, and that's all very true, the other thing a lot of people don't know is Lee Marvin was also in World War II.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And he's got a different perspective on it. Same as I have a different perspective on Vietnam. Now, if you said, okay, Daryl, I'm going to take you and we're going to make a movie on Vietnam, I would have a problem with it,
Right.
Because of my experience, and they're not going to show what my experience is, or how brutal it can be,
Right.
because face it, over the years, from World War II on, the cameras were there. Okay. And Vietnam was the one that was most filmed than any war. And still to this day, any war. And they showed how nasty war can be. And you got your critics out there.
And the reality is, it was always, at cruel. It just,
there was nothing different far as the war battles or anything else different, other than the weapons that you're using. Yeah, some of them are a lot more devastating than they were during World War II, which is just normal progress. But killing of someone else, or killing or having somebody shoot at you, is still the same. That goes back to Civil War, when they used muskets. It's
that was a bloody war. Good Lord.
I mean, when people ask me, the ones that didn't go in, I say, I'm glad you didn't, because it's nothing that I'd want anybody to have to go through.
Yeah, I mean, like all of my friends that have been off, like, I've been actually very lucky. I didn't have to go off to Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, like, wherever, we're at. And I had a lot of friends that did, and they did not come back the same.
No, and that's just it. It doesn't. You're not going to be the same. And I'm not saying not everybody should go into the service. No, I agree. Everybody should have an opportunity to go into the service if that's what they want to do.
Right.
Now, as far as the going into the service part of it, I didn't mind that. I just don't like getting shot at.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I like this weird allergy to lead. It's weird.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a very good shot, but when someone's shooting at you, you might find out that you're not as sharp as you used to be.
Right.
Well, and that's actually kind of interesting, when watching, a little bit of a sidetrack, but watching The Big Red One, Mark Hamill's character, who was a expert sharpshooter, through all the training and stuff like that. It's like, and all those people work together. It's like they know that, like, oh, you're the guy. But then when he starts getting shot at, all of a sudden he kind of like, he loses it, and it's like, dude, I've never seen you miss a shot ever. Yeah. And he's not the same person.
And when people come back from an actual war zone, they're different. They're going to be different. The hardest thing is getting back to, quote, normalcy.
That's probably why Lee Marvin was so great. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, we've deviated a little bit from the movie, but let me try to get back on track. Just kind of piggybacking off of what you said about Lee Marvin, how like he fought in World War II, so he has a little bit of different perspective on things. But then, like, what do you think his character's problem or perceived problem was then? Because like he was seen as someone who's insubordinate. Like, what do you think? Like, was his what do you think he did that like earned him like that kind of reputation?
Well, I think when you look at this movie versus some of the other movies that are out there, and some of the other ones that he has done himself, you notice there's humor put into this. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of humor in it. Some of it's funnier than heck. But that, some of the things, that's why I say, quote, this is Hollywood. They took a true story and make a movie out of it, but they made it palatable for a larger audience. Okay. And he understands the business. He understands that's what they're doing. But when you're portraying a war film, he knows it's not realistic. He knows a lot of the things that they're doing is not going to happen. That's not the case. His opinion of that, again, because he served in the service and he's seen it, I don't know how, I compare it to myself. I don't know how I would act if they had put me into some kind of role play on the Vietnam, how I would really feel about
Right.
it.
Well,
If you
yeah,
want it to
I
be
was just
accurate, or do you don't want it to be accurate?
right. Well, I was just meaning more like, what do you think the backstory is for Major Reisman?
Oh well, if I had to take a guess, and just from the military, unfortunately, it's just like any sort of it's there's a lot of great people in the military. So what I'm going to say,
Mm-hmm.
it's not denigrating the military, but there are a lot. It's a government organization, and a government organization has a lot of people that tend to fail upwards. And you get these people that are in power. It's like, how the fuck did you get here? Because you
Right.
don't like now. So in the case of like Ernest Borgnine's character, Major General Warden, he seems like a guy that like he probably earned his spot. He doesn't seem like a complete dumbass. But then you get who was the other there was a couple of the other I think it was like Robert Webb. Was it Robert Webber's character?
Yeah, Robert Weber,
General
Dalton,
Denton, who was
Denton. Yeah.
Hmm.
a jackass. Fuck
Right.
that guy. He's a guy that like probably has not like done a goddamn thing in the army, but like he just he kissed so much ass or sucked somebody's dick to get to become a general, and I hate people like that. Whereas like you have Major Reisman who's worked his ass his entire time in the army, just to make it to a the position as major, and
Right.
he hates people like that because these people tend to they fly through the ranks somehow. Whereas like the people who actually know their job, do their job well, care about like their people and the military and doing the job right, those guys get fucked big time by dicks like that. And
In
like
all branch of services too.
yeah,
That happens in all branches.
yeah. There's so many. That's part of the reason why I ended up leaving the Navy because I couldn't do it. I'm not gonna stick my nose right up some dude's rectum to advance a rating or sell somebody out just for an award or like a good rating. It's just a good evaluation. It's just I'm not gonna do it. And I so to me I understand Major Reisman, like, and he's like, fuck these
Yeah.
people because they don't
We
deserve to be there.
we had some, even I had some experience with that as well. The only difference is where we were, the ones that wanted to go home would listen to the sergeants, you know,
Bingo, yeah,
Mhm.
because they had the experience and they were smart enough to listen to them. Now, the other ones that were a dick were the ones that thought, well, I know more than you do because I went to college and I did this and I did this and I know who, it was who you know and who you blow, that kind of mentality, to where, hey, I'm at ranking, you do what the hell I tell
and
you.
those are the guys
Those are
that,
the guys that have a hard time coming home
yeah,
because they don't make
and those are the guys that they survive, they go up in rank, and then they end up becoming politicians and doing the same fucking thing in the government. That's
it.
the problem.
How true. But
Mm.
this movie, I wanted you to see it because it was a different perspective than Big Red One. Now, Big Red One is very realistic. It's hard to watch, even it being a World War, the movie that it is.
Yeah,
And the other one is Platoon. That one's another one that's hard to watch because they're closer to being realistic versus this one. This one has a lot of entertainment in it, but it has a lot of meaning behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And Lee Marvin is one of my favorite actors to begin with. He's
right.
he's he's very good at what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this movie is great because you have a mixture of great veterans like Lee Marvin, Robert Webber, Ernest Borgnine, they all these star-studded actors. You also have a lot of guys who have become big actors, but this is their start, or
Mm-hmm.
like they were very young, like um, Telly Savalas. This is I think this is I think it's like one of his very first things that he did. Donald Sutherland. But then you have guys, Clint Walker's been in a bunch of stuff. You have John Cassavetes was a character actor who I think was nominated for an Academy Award as best supporting actor in this one. Jim Brown was a rookie. He actually retired from football because of for this film. because it the director Altman Aldrich, he's one of those guys, like he was very meticulous, and a lot of these guys were only, it was supposed to only be like 4 months. It ended up being like almost a year. And yeah, like a lot of guys, like Trini Lopez, who's a singer, he ended up leaving because he's like, my career is at, he was big, really big in in music, but then so he ended up leaving the movie. And then um, Jim Brown is like, well, I was hired on to do the movie. You don't just leave. So, and the Cleveland Browns owner came and is like, "Are you gonna come back?" Fuck no, I'm gonna do the movie.
He's probably making more money with the movie than he was getting beat
Hell
up.
yeah, he did.
Yeah. Oh well, like how you said about Trini Lopez, how he went back to his music career. That makes sense because he was the one that got killed off screen. Like he was the one that died.
Right,
and
that was because he was contracted for 4 months.
Mhm.
He ended up staying an extra 3 months, and they weren't even halfway done with the film.
Wow, jeez.
But it ended up that Frank Sinatra was in London, who was his friend, came by and had lunch with him. It's like, hey, I know you're with this movie, but like, you're big right now, and the public is very fickle. They're not gonna remember you. You're gonna lose it all if you don't go back.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got lured in. He listened to Frank Sinatra and went back to his music career and told Robert Aldrich, like, I gotta go. It's
Right. Yeah, I got other priorities.
And so they rewrote the whole scene, because he was supposed to be in that whole final scene, and that whole final act, and he wasn't. And so he's like, he ended up getting kind of written out as being hung, and kind of got
Right. But
bad
interestingly, I think it adds to the stakes of the mission because
Well, and that I think it was a smart writing and smart directing, and like how
yeah, it was a good decision because like I mean I know it wasn't ideal, but I think it kind of lends like the realism where it's like you could even not everyone was gonna make it clearly, but not everyone was gonna make it to the opening act, as it were. And like here's like this poor guy who's like whose chute didn't deploy correctly or whatever, ends up dying and hanging, like left to hang in a tree.
Well,
So which I think just adds to like just adds another layer of realism to the entire movie.
Exactly.
Well, funny thing too about Trini Lopez is that like after he had just left, and he's like, he's like, fuck, I should have stayed with the movie. And he talked to Robert Aldrich to come back, and he's like, sorry man, you're dead in a tree, dude, like you can't. They're like, we are not reshooting the whole thing to bring you back, dude. It's not gonna happen. And it's like, and good on Robert Aldrich. It's like, he understood, so they did a whole thing to rewrite the whole thing. And it's just like, sorry, you're not coming back. I'm sorry. You're dead in a tree.
You're still hanging, man.
Yeah.
Right. We can't go like, oh, just kidding. He was just knocked out.
Yeah, right.
And he comes in, at the last second on a motorcycle with a machine gun, just like killing all the Germans.
Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. But like I said, like you were saying, Andy, it adds to the tension because, like, fuck, one of our key players is gone. Now we have to reshuffle, and I think it throws the whole group in, like, you feel the tension because it's like we're screwed.
Well, that's where they start realizing what they were been trained for, and the idea of and why they give him that little song to remember, so that someone could easily take his place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, it was 16 parts, and I have it here. It's like it's step 1, down to the roadblock. We've just begun.
Right.
2, the guards are through. 3, the Major's men are on the spree. 4, Major and Waterslaw go through the door. 5, Pinkley stays out in the drive. 6, the Major gives the rope a fix. 7, Waterslaw throws the hook to heaven. 8, Jimenez has got a date. 9, the other guys go up the line. 10, Sawyer and Gilpin are in the pen. 11, Posey guards points 5 and 7. 12. Wadislaw and the Major go down to delve. 13. Franco goes up without being seen. 14. 0 hour. Jimenez cuts the cable. Franco cuts the phone. 15. Franco goes in where the others have been. 16. We all come out like it's Halloween. And I think had everything played out, you wouldn't have had. I don't think you would have had as much chaos because you ended up having to use Maggot more, which they did not want to do because even like when they were because they went through like all the prisoners' heads like see like where they're at and they were warned. Riceland was warned like this guy's a fucking nut. He's not. He can't do this. You know, they all. I mean, even like out of all the characters, like he was never really part of the group because they had all the fun times at the end of their training.
Where they put Maggot in the other building while they were celebrating.
Well, he was on guard duty because he's a freaking nut. He was like he thought he hated women. I mean, that was the reason why he was in prison in the brig to begin with.
Right.
But yeah, it's just
he flips out.
Yeah. But I guess in a lot of in a lot of ways though it adds to the tension of the movie and I think him being a crazy person and fucking everything up makes the movie as awesome as it was.
Right. Yeah, he was the wild card. You know, it's like, you know, is he gonna hold his shit together long enough so that this mission can be a success, or is it going to be a liability? And he ultimately, he becomes a liability, like in a very slight way. I think, not to where
he does his part to a certain degree.
Right. It's like he becomes a liability up to a certain like point. Like it's not like it not as though like it catastrophically derails the mission, but it's like it's still kind of like, you know, it's like it gave the mission a flat tire, basically.
Yeah.
And again, you have to be prepared for something that you're not prepared for. When the horror came down the hallway, that's why he flipped. You know.
Right.
When she started to walk into the officer's bed, you know, that room, that's when he flipped. You know.
Yeah. That's when he was triggered.
Like even after all his before he ended up stabbing her to death, you know, she was like into his whole like she screamed, but like she was about ready to all right, you know.
Yeah, she's ready to jump his bones.
What she's trained to do, you know.
And he stabbed her to death. It's like Jesus Christ.
But you know, that's good acting. You know, as far as the movie, I think it fit. You know, because there's some people that can take the pressure, and there's some that are not. Obviously, we can all figure out that he was a nut. You know, he should have been left at home.
Well,
yeah. I mean,
he started shooting it at his own guys too. That's what caused all the chaos in.
He flipped out.
Yeah.
That's why it made it more thrilling, didn't it?
That's right.
That's right.
Well, you know, with that final scene too, the building that because that was all like a very strongly built set for that final scene in the chateau. They built it so strong that it would have taken about what I remember saying, it was like I think it was like 70 pounds of explosives just to like and it wouldn't even put a dent in it. So they end up having to rebuild part of it out of like plastic and balsa wood.
Right.
And they still use I think about the same amount of explosive, about 70 pounds. And like now, guys, when the explosives go off, you know you're gonna want to like wince and duck and you know to make it look more realistic. And it's like they're like, yeah, we didn't have to act. That was a fucking loud ass explosion. And because they filmed that about like 40 miles outside of London. Yeah, London heard it.
Oh yeah.
And they were pissed.
You know, those big chateaus, realistic, it's a big house, you know, and it's usually, if we were going to be more accurate about it, it's usually brick, you know, and
That's right.
And huge. And if you were going to really be more picky about fact, you know, this was a bunker under the ground. you know.
That's
and
right.
all you would have seen under the normal conditions would be all those stacks would shoot flame probably about 50, 60
Right.
feet up. Wouldn't
Yep.
do any damage to the chateau at all,
Right.
you know.
Well, that wouldn't have been as much fun.
They're right. It wouldn't be as much fun. I mean, you know, when you want a big boom, you want a big boom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, like I said, they built it so accurately, and like it's like, yeah, we would need like so much explosives. Like it it would be a crater, at that point. It's like
Right,
everyone would be dead.
Right.
right.
I mean, I think realistically, maybe they would have gone the route of like Valkyrie and like try to use an
Hmm.
enclosed space to like use like small explosives to create like a pressure wave to kill them all. But yeah, explosions are better. Bigger explosions are
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, no,
Well, they do that for the, you know, they
I
do
love
that for the camera, you know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
But
exactly. Yeah, like
the other thing that I thought was very interesting, just on my thoughts, when you look at how it was set up, and there was what, four or five supposedly air ducts coming out of the ground.
hmm
Um, when you looked at the inside of that bunker, you know, briefly,
hmm
to me, it reminded me of the gas chambers that they used in the Auschwitz, you know,
Yep,
in the death
Ah, yeah, yeah,
camps.
yeah.
yeah.
And I don't know if that was done purposely or not, but that's what I said. Wow, that looks just like some of the realistic gas showers that they used to exterminate the
Well,
Jews.
because I like also from watching the documentary, what I think they were trying to go for, since this was done in the late '60s, is they were trying to symbolize like kind of like how like napalm and stuff was used during the Vietnam War and stuff like that. That was kind of like what that scene, with them pouring the gas and the grenades
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
So it's kind of a mixture of both wars, kind of
right,
combine them both.
right.
hmm
And it was just showing how like it's it's fucked up. Like it's just like yeah, and war is not a nice thing, and
No.
yeah, it was just crazy.
But a little off subject, I just wanted to let people know I think one of the best World War II movies that you could ever watch is Band of Brothers.
Oh
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
I love Band Brothers. Like
yeah, to
every
me,
year I watch it. I watch this. I watch the miniseries every year.
yeah, yeah. To me, that was not only that, it's, you know, you have the live people that guided them through of the writing, you know,
hmm
and these were, you know, as far as being as realistic as you can. Um, and of course, look at the directors you had. I mean, but
Right.
it was done so well. I mean, it
hmm
really was done well.
yeah. It's and I'm glad that we have so many of these of those guys that we've recorded and talked to and like learned their story. Because we're getting to the point where it's like it's almost 100 years that
I
World War
know, I
You think
know.
it's like, it's not that long ago. It's like, no, those guys are almost 100 years old now.
Right. Or dead.
Or dead. Yeah,
Yeah, they're in their upper 90s now.
Yeah.
yeah,
And the thing is that my grandkids and everything else, I set them down and we go through those movies, you know, and then I explain to them, you know, I says, you know, because my grandson at one time, he was younger, and he says, Grandpa, why do we have war movies? Everybody says war's hell. And I go, yeah, war is hell, but the idea of these, and especially if they're documentaries or it's a realistic, it's giving you an idea uh, of what war is like, okay, and so that you have an idea when it comes up and the decision is to be made, do we go to war or not? You have an idea of what you're looking at,
yeah,
hmm
and a lot of people, even today, and older people and everything else, don't think about that. You know, when it's easy to send someone else, but if it was your kid, then you're raising hell. You know, but
Bingo.
when it comes to these things, you want the history there. You want to learn the history so you don't repeat it. You know,
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing, is you don't want to make the same mistakes that others have done in the past. We should learn from them, not repeat them. Then
Well said.
politics
Well
gets
said.
involved.
Well said.
But I'd like to know what your overall evaluation of the movie is.
Oh, I mean, I now I've seen it 3 times now. I love the movie. I will definitely be watching it again at some point. Like Lee Marvin is one of my favorite actors, just like you. And I love. Well, actually, now they in in the filming of this, because Lee Marvin was not like he was a diva, but like he was going through he was a really heavy drinker, especially at this time, and like he had just won the Academy Award for Cat Ballou, and there was a lot of problems that him and Charles Bronson had. But I love the interaction between him and Charles Bronson in this movie. They were great. Actually, like I would actually say that I like Charles Bronson the most in this movie. I liked Wadislaw as a character. He was probably my favorite character in the movie, and I love it. You got a lot of great humor. You have a lot of it's kind of people defying authority, which I'm always I, I'm kind of in favor of a lot of time, especially nowadays. And it's just it's fun. It's fun and serious at the same time. It which you wouldn't think about, like in a movie could do both things, but this is a movie that does it, and it shows the seriousness of war, but it also shows the camaraderie and the fun that you can have, and kind of how you being in the military, you kind of build it's a family in a lot of ways, because you have to have each other's back. Yeah, you might hate each other, but at the same time, you got to work together. And you build a camaraderie that you wouldn't expect, and that's kind of like what all these people who have different backgrounds, different problems, um, but they find common ground and they work together and they become a tight unit, and they ended up they get to a point where they're working as one unit. And I love this movie. It's so good.
Yeah, this movie was very enjoyable for me as well. Um, yeah, just how Robert was saying how like and it's kind of like the message of like a lot of war movies where it's like it's about it's not about the single individual, but it's about the man to the right or left of you, and you're fighting for them. Um, yeah, I think one of my favorite scenes was during their training, and how like they all decided like they weren't gonna go through any more training unless they got hot water for like their shaves. It's like and I think because again, like me and Robert came up with this term called cinematic archaeology, where it's like you see the same trope in like a lot of movies, and you kind of like try to pinpoint the origination of that trope. And I'm sure it wasn't like in this movie, but I think this is the earliest we've seen it. But like the idea of like when you have like these disparate personalities and like these individualists, but then like they finally do something that's together, or as a group, and it's that scene. Even Reisman, he even acknowledges that. It's like, oh, they didn't say that I wouldn't do it. They said that we aren't going to do it. And so that's yeah, he was encouraged by that. I think more recently, or the most recent example that I can think of this happening was in that movie with The Rock, that football movie, like the Gridiron Gang.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he was like, yeah, like it was like 100+ day, and like they're practicing, and the kids were complaining that that they wanted some water, and like the Rock said like, oh, it's like no water until we get this right, and then like they all like sat down, and and it was like the first time that that they all decided that they were all kind of working for each other. It's like if this guy's not gonna do it, then I'm not gonna do it, and like they all decided to get to, as a team, to not practice until they got some water, and then when that happened, The Rock got very encouraged, like, oh, or The Rock's character got very encouraged, like, okay, this can work. And I think same thing for Reisman's character. When he saw that, it's like, yep, this could work.
Well, it even got to the point where he was saying, like, when it's like, I would put up one of my men against 10 of yours. It's like that's how
right to the colonel. Yeah.
When you have that type of camaraderie, and one of the other movies that shows that quite a lot is Devil's Brigade, and they did the same thing there, and it's very similar to this story, but that one's another one that you got to see. But that's been used in training to pull people together, because we have a tendency to stay apart.
Right.
Some of the group will stay here, some of the group will stay over here, and you can't have that under these circumstances. And that's where you learn that there's no color in you've heard it, there's no color in a foxhole, and everybody, everything goes totally away, because you have to rely on each other to survive. And that's what makes you really tight. And that's when you say, okay, yeah, we're all brothers. When it comes to veterans, we're all brothers because we've all been there. Yep. And we understand that. And that makes us stronger, not weaker.
Yeah, damn right.
Yeah. But there's several movies out there that, like I said, when it comes to war movies, there's a bunch of them that I like, and I could talk for hours on the different movies. Well, and then get surprised on which ones Robert hasn't seen.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this is this genre and like westerns. Like I've only like really scratched the surface. There's so many of them. Good, bad, and ugly.
But I gotta cut you some slack. I'm just a few years older than you, so I do have an advantage on you.
Just a tad bit older than me. It's
yeah. I mean, yeah, and I have a leg up on Robert, just because my dad was really into war movies, and just like you, Daryl, like he was also in Vietnam, so yeah. But I don't know exactly. I don't know if he ever fought, but I've seen pictures of him like in Vietnam, like when he was in Vietnam, and in his uniform and with the surrounded by his buddies and things like that. But he doesn't really talk about it, and I never really pressed him on it because
it's I go to a Vietnam group, and mainly because I do have some problems that I brought home with me, and not everybody does, and everybody's. It's like you can go to the same war. My experience is going to be different than this guy's experience, unless he was in the same area I was, right? So Vietnam went on for so many years, and the guys that were there earlier had a totally different experience than what I had, and vice versa. And even the ones that were there the same years I was there, they would have different because they were located in a different spot. But when you come home, there's a lot of us that just don't want to talk about it because they want to leave it in the past. And I understand that. I understand where your dad's coming from. I hid from that for like 15 years after I got back. But then it was eating me up, and so I had to let it out. And that's where these groups come in handy. If in other words, he can't sleep, and it's physically changing his lifestyle and quality of life, then you have to reach out and get some help. And that's where we're not good at. That's why there's a lot of us that are still pretty messed up. And the numbers, when you get into the fact of it, that's why suicide is high for veterans when they come home, and a lot of the homeless out on the street are veterans. There's so many different cases because of the year, time, and experience.
Yeah.
And so I understand from your dad. My heart goes out for him. I hope he's at peace with himself, because it's not an easy thing, even if he wasn't in battles, but just by being there. Because no matter where you're at a threat. They just change their clothes and sit down and have a beer with you.
Right.
So, you just never know. But like I said, everybody's experience is different.
Mm-hmm.
But my heart always goes out to the veterans, because the hardest part, I think, for all the veterans is our homecomings. We didn't get a homecoming because of the politics and everything
Right.
else that were
There's no
involved.
ticker tape parades for you guys.
No, there was no, hey, thanks for doing your work, or whatever. And mentally, that hurt a lot of people, because you go over there with an idea. I'm doing this for my country, and this is what my country wants to do. Um, and you get drafted. If you were still in the draft, you go and come home and not get any kind of appreciation or anything out of it. That hurts a lot of people, and those are scars that will never be mended.
In some cases, you guys got spit on, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, those we knocked the shit out of them if we had a chance, and sometimes we did.
Yeah.
But it led to a lot of problems with alcohol, drugs, mental. It runs the gamut.
Yeah.
The hard part is getting back to normal, whatever normal is. I think you guys know me. You think I'm still crazy, but that's okay.
No, that's not true.
No.
You're different. It's
Oh,
okay.
I would say so.
My Santa's a Vietnam vet.
Well, I'm very appreciative just to still be alive and be here. And if you'll notice, a lot of times I wear my Vietnam hat around, and it's not to draw attention to me, but it's to draw attention to the guys that we left behind, and that's why I wear the hat. Because people have asked me, why do you wear that hat? I says, because I'm wearing it for those who can't wear that hat.
Bingo. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There it is. All right.
Any other
anything else? Yeah. Anything else to add, or?
Well, is there any other? I mentioned one was Devil's Brigade. If you haven't seen that movie, that's another one that's excellent in the list. That's another one you'll believe me. You'll go, oh wow, that was great, because it's up there in my top list as well. And I think I've given, I don't know how many out that they're worth seeing. Of that era. That's another World War II movie.
I don't have any other scenes or anything else to talk about. But this is overall a great movie. I am glad that it was recommended, and that we're talking about it today.
And another one, Robert, that I want you to see is Bridge Over River Kwai.
It's happening. Don't worry. It is on my watch list.
And I hope I get to interview it with you, because there's a lot of knowledge I have from that movie.
Okay, well we'll do an episode on it. I know there's a lot of movies that you want to talk about, and we'll have you on again, and we'll talk about some of those movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's one it's kind of interesting. It's a tourist attraction today.
Okay.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's very interesting how people will approach that. Even today. Oh, I want to go see that. And the story behind it all is just phenomenal. That's a true story. That's based on a true story.
Yeah, I will watch that movie. Both Andy and I will.
All right.
Hey, Andy, tell your dad I say hi. All right.
All right, for sure. Yeah. I don't I don't think that my dad has or is having issues, but what the hell do I know? I'm just a son. Um,
Well, yeah, a lot of times we hide it quite well, but
right. Yeah.
I
You
hope
know.
he's not. Not everybody, I guess, has. Well, it changes you regardless, but
Right.
I hope you would know if he really had a serious issue. But still, I want him to know that I say welcome home.
For sure. For sure. I'll relay the message. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. That. Okay. I guess we're concluding our review here. Daryl, if you weren't aware, we give our ratings of it usually out of five.
Hmm.
So if you would be so kind as to start us off with giving us your rating for the Dirty Dozen.
Well, the Dirty Dozen, and because like I said, I got a list like you wouldn't believe, but I would give it a 3.5 to a 4 star,
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
based
Very
on
good.
some of the other movies that, that are 5 stars.
Okay. All right. Okay, Robert, your rating.
I would say probably about 4 stars. I mean, I love Lee Marvin,
Oh yeah.
one of my favorites.
Mhm.
We like I said, we just did that episode on our favorite leading male celebrities. Lee Marvin is one of my favorite dead celebrities.
Mhm.
Um, so I would say like a 4. It's a great ensemble cast. I love that it's serious, but it's not so serious where like it has a lot of it's a fun movie, but it's also very serious at the same time. I kind of like the balance that it has.
Hmm.
And um I think this is one of those movies that's just so well cast. But I also go to the point where it's like, it is kind of, based off of like what Lee Marvin was saying, who was the star of the movie. He says like, yeah, but it's not a super realistic war movie.
Mhm.
It's a good movie. He loved being in it, but he recommended like, this is the movie that I was in that I feel is the closest to what it actually feels like to be in war. That was
Mhm.
the Big Red One, and for that, I'm gonna give it a 4. I'm going based off of like what Lee Marvin says.
Hmm.
All right. Cool. Very good. I will give this a 3.5. Um, Great movie. Don't get me wrong. Strong performances all around. Usually mine has to do with more technical things, and I think some of the editing towards the end was just like just not
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Especially
and I think a lot of that was due.
especially in that climactic battle. I think some of the editing just wasn't quite as as tight as I would have liked it. So yeah.
And I think they were kind of rushed at the end too, because Robert
They
Aldrich
were.
took so much time, like to
Hmm.
get to that point. I
Right.
mean, where it's like, I mean, you even had guys leaving the movie, and the only reason that Jim Brown stayed on is because, like, well, I'm on the movie. You don't leave the movie. He
Right.
retired.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he would have left too. It's
He
uh
was being pressured by the studio quite a bit there towards
Yeah.
the end.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
they were.
like it did win the Academy Award for Best Sound Effects Editing. So I mean that
Mhm.
sound wise, it was great.
Yeah. 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 It's very
Yeah,
immersive.
but I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's not a perfect movie, but man, it's great.
Yeah, it's
If
so
Yeah,
good. I
it's
still
in that
recommend it
upper
to
class.
anybody who
Oh yeah.
asks.
Yep.
Uh, all right. Well, that's our review. That'll do it for us tonight. That was our review for the Dirty Dozen. Daryl gives it a 3.5 to
And a half.
4, depending on the day. Rob gives it a 4. I give it a 3.5 as well. Um, this is a movie that, of course, we highly recommend. Uh, you know, um, very well, done, very entertaining. Can't praise it enough.
yeah, yes, sir.
All right.
I
Well,
thank
yeah.
you guys for having me.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
really,
Anytime, Daryl.
I
Yeah,
really
anytime.
enjoy the canter back and forth and your opinion as well. So, I thank you for that.
We love having you on, buddy.
Yeah, anytime,
All righty.
anytime. When you're not delivering presents to the good children around the world.
That's only towards December.
Yeah.
December. You're not going to find me. This is my summer job.
Right. Yeah, talking about war movies.
Yeah, movie commentator. Yeah, that's his
Movie
that's his side
commentator
hustle.
and fisherman.
Yeah. All right, folks, that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to check out the library of other content we have, the Circle of Jerks main podcast, Nocturnal Transmissions, of course, and Rob's gaming show, Up by Up Down. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts, Letterboxd and Twitter at PodcastCOJ and Instagram at Circle of Jerks Podcast. And with all that said, we thank you, and we'll do it all again next week.